Welcome to tonight's Tanya class. We are in Tanya. We're in the last section of Tanya called Kuntus Achrein, the last section, and we are holding the 6th chapter of the last section in Tanya known as Kuntus Achrein. So every single chapter, as we know, since it's the Bible of mysticism, has its theme, has its message. Obviously, everything is intertwined, but there is one complete message. And the message of this week's portion, this week's section of Tanya is that Halacha of Torah, you have Torah, and then you have the Halachot of Torah, the law, Jewish law of Torah, that the Jewish law of Torah is much higher than anything you can imagine. Jewish law of Torah is much higher than anything you can imagine. So imagine it's higher than that. In other words, if you recall from last week in chapter 5, the Alter Rebbe explained as follows, that when a person does a mitzvah, or a person studies Halacha of Torah, there's two things that happen. One is that you draw down a tremendous godly light. So every time you do tefillin, kashrut, Shabbat, or you sit down and learn Halacha of Torah, a beautiful, powerful light of Hashem comes into the world. Comes around you, comes in the world. That's number one that happens. And the second thing that happens is that it elevates the holy sparks in this world. So that's what we learned last week. Again, Mitzvot and Halacha of Torah bring in a big light and elevate the sparks. This week the Alter comes and says, no. Learning Halacha of Torah is much higher than that, much higher than anything related to the world. As we're saying, we learn Halacha of Torah brings in light into the world and it elevates the world. The Alter says, no, it's much even higher. Why? Because it's on a certain level that the way Torah is so high and so powerful that the world doesn't even exist. Last week we spoke about coming into the world, it's elevating the world, it's holy sparks. But this week he's going to show you that compared to a certain level of Torah, this world doesn't even exist. And it's based on a famous story in the prophets that unfortunately when the philishtim at one point, they captured the ark. And King David was able to rescue and recapture back the ark, which was a big thing. Now, when he recaptured back the ark, so King David went ahead and he had to transport the ark back to the temple, back to Jerusalem. So he brought it back and he put it on a wagon, horse and buggy. He put it on a wagon. And what happened was, we all know, and it says that even children know this, that it says in the Torah, that the ark, you're not allowed to put on a wagon. You can't just go put it on a wagon or on a horse or any other animal. You have to carry it on your shoulders. The verse says, "Bakasam yes'o." So, in other words, King David forgot a basic halacha, a basic verse in the Torah that says you should carry the ark on your shoulders. Now, the question is, why did King David forget? And the answer they say is very, very simple, because he called the Torah Zmiros. Torah, you learn Torah, he called it Zmirot. And we're going to soon see why, the reason behind it. But he called it Zmirot, so he forgot. So the question is, a simple question. Why was he punished because he called it Torah Zmirot? He likes the Torah. Why was he punished for that? And then the questions we know, everything, the punishment fits the crime always. So let's even say we're going to know the reason why he's punished because he called it Zmirot. So then what's the connection between forgetting about how to transport the ark to the fact that he called the Torah Zmiros? So that's more or less an introduction to this chapter, and now we're going to learn the chapter inside. So the Alter begins by quoting the verse where it says that King David went ahead and his big sin was, that caused him to forget, because he called it Torah Zmirot. And as the Alter starts with the chapter, David Zmirot Karalo, he called it Torah Zmirot. And the question is, obviously, and he was punished for that, and the question is, why was he punished for that? So the Alter quotes from the Zohar, Kabbalah, that says like this, Shvacha de'iraisa v'ranana, which means that the Torah is praised for Hashem. You learn Torah, you read the Torah, that's all praise for Hashem. So the question is, a very, very simple question. You're learning Torah, and the Torah says this is forbidden, this is permissible, this one says like this. How's that praising for Hashem? What's the praise of Hashem when you learn Torah? I mean, you're learning Torah. What's the connection between praise of Hashem? So the Alter was going to explain these ideas based on a verse in Psalms. King David says in Psalms, and he says like this. I'll say it in Hebrew and I'll translate it. Ma godlu ma'asecha Hashem, ma'oid amku machshavesecha, which basically translates, how great is the actions of you, Hashem, and how deep is your thought. So the Alter Rebbe asks a simple question. We all know that we have thought, we have speech, and we have action. And if you ask yourself, what comes first? Just like 1, 2, 3. 1 comes first, then 2, then 3. So what comes first? Thought or action?
Thought.
Thought comes first. If you're dealing with thought and action, thought comes first, then action. If you do action first and then you think about it, that's like going backwards. So the Alter Rebbe says, what does this mean when King David says that how great is the actions of Hashem, how deep is his thought? Start off how deep his thought is, and then say how great the actions are. Based on the thought, you'll have an insight how great the actions are. You don't say, oh, Hashem's actions are great. Oh, how deep his thought is. It's the opposite you should say. So the Alter Rebbe explains like this. Obviously, if King David is saying, and he's starting with the actions first, so what King David is teaching us here is, and the Alter Rebbe is going to explain in depth, that through the maisim, through the actions, through the materialistic world, we will learn about the depth of how great the machshav of Hashem is. And he explains like this. In other words, what is the maisim? What is the actions? The actions are the worlds. So, and we know there's many worlds. There's the higher worlds, there's the lower worlds, all the different worlds. And all the worlds are dependent on what? On the mitzvot of Hashem. The lower worlds, the higher worlds, everything is dependent on the mitzvot of Hashem. What does that mean practically? It means like this. And the author explains as follows. And he gives an example. He gives a few examples. Example number 1 he gives is as follows. Let's say somebody, God forbid, does something wrong against Hashem. Sins against Hashem. He's in trouble. He sinned against Hashem. Now, what do you do if you want to make up? So Hashem, Baruch Hashem, thank God Hashem loves us, and Hashem is kind, and Hashem is compassionate, and He allows us to do tshuva. One of the ways He allows us to do tshuva is, He says, very simple. You did something wrong. I mean, certain cases, but let's say in the cases that you did something wrong, Hashem says, go ahead, buy yourself an animal in times of the temple, buy an animal, and go ahead and you know, that money you could have used to support your family, and now you're not going to have the money because you're giving it away to a farmer. You're going to buy an animal, so your money is gone. You're going to bring that animal, you're going to bring it as a sacrifice to Hashem, and then you're giving away to Hashem. That was in those days. Modern days, you have money that you can buy food for your family, or for yourself, or whatever it may be, and instead you give it away to charity. That's called a sacrifice. You're sacrificing what you can use yourself for Hashem. Now, when you do a sacrifice, there's very, very specific halachot. What type of animal, what age has to be, it can't be with a blemish, how it should be slaughtered, how the blood is sprinkled on the altar. I mean, there's many, many components. The priest, and there can't be any chatzitza. There's a lot of halachot. Now, what does that mean? If you do it the way you're supposed to, the sacrifice is accepted. If you don't do it the way you're supposed to, it's not accepted. Now, so what does that mean? Let's say, for example, you bring the sacrifice and you follow all the rules and it's accepted. You know what you just did? You created shalom, peace between all the worlds. Because when you sin, God forbid, so now you created a disconnection from Hashem. When you bring the sacrifice, you sacrificed and you did it right, fine, Hashem said, I forgive you. So now you have back peace. So in other words, when you do the sacrifice right, you create union between all the worlds. When, God forbid, you don't do it right, it's not perfect, the person wasn't forgiven. So you don't have the unity. You don't have the union. So you see clearly, in order to create peace in the world, what has to happen? You have to follow halacha to the T. When you follow halacha to the T, you create union. If you don't have the unity. So you see the world and world peace is dependent on us following the Torah, and the halachot of the Torah are exactly specific. So what's more powerful? The world or the Torah? The Torah for sure. Because in order for it to be peace and order for the world to exist and not to be shaking, you got to follow halacha. If you follow halacha, everything is fine. If God forbid you don't, it doesn't work out. So even though the world looks like this big world, guess what? The world is run by halacha. Yeah. Now, that's one example. Another example, and again, you can go through every single mitzvah. The Alter Rebbe picks three.
Are we talking all the world?
All the worlds. All the worlds. Sure. In all the worlds. We say this one Esrei.
No.
Again, we can go through every single mitzvah. It's going to take two more. Take, for example, the mitzvah of tefillin. The mitzvah of tefillin. Now, the mitzvah of tefillin, so there's the physical mitzvah of tefillin. You put on the phylacteries, you put on your head, you put on your hand, you make the blessing, you have the right meditation, so on and so on. Welcome, come have a seat. Come this way. Have a seat. Okay, so you put on tefillin, right? What happens spiritually when you put on tefillin? So we know tefillin is moichin, intellect. And when you put on tefillin, and you put it on properly, and you have the right kavanot, you draw down intellect of Zah and Malchut, which is the emotions of the world of Atzilot down to this world. So literally, when you put on tefillin, you're drawing down powerful intellect of Zah and Malchut of the highest world of Atzilut. Atzilut Bri Yitzir Asiyah. It's coming from the highest world down to this world by putting on tefillin. Now, what happens, God forbid, that tefillin is not kosher? It's not working. You're not drawing anything down. If the film, for example, let's say it's missing a letter, whatever the disqualification for tefillin is, you don't draw anything down. It's like, for example, let's say you have electric in the house and you don't pay the electric bill. You put on all the light switches, it doesn't go on. On the other hand, you pay the bill, it goes on. Or if there's a cut in the wire, etc. On a spiritual, so what does that mean? You might have the nicest fixtures in your house, but if you don't pay the bill and the wire is cut, you're not going to have electricity in your house. The same thing also spiritually. If you have a period film but it's not kosher, the effect of drawing down the godly light is not going to happen. On the other hand, when you have a tefillin which is 100% kosher, and it's kosher perfect, it means you have good pipes, fiber, optic wire, it's coming down, the energy is shooting down, so it shoots down from intellect of Zah and Malchut of Atzilut down to this world. So in other words, what do you see again from this example? What creates this world's reality? Is the world create the reality? Or is it the Halacha of the Torah that creates the reality of the world? It's the Halacha of the Torah that creates the reality of the world. And the same, the Alter Rebbe says, he gave you two examples, the same, the Alter Rebbe says, applies to all the negative precepts in the Torah. God forbid, if you transgress any of them, you stop the flow. Or on the other hand, if you refrain, so the flow keeps on going. So in other words, you see clearly that what brings down the light and life force to this world is halakha. So based on this, Alter Rebbe explains what King David says in Psalms, Ma godlu masecha Hashem, that when you think about, take a moment, think about this world that we live in. The world is huge. The world is huge. Cities, counties, states, countries, the world is huge. Big world. And now there's many worlds, but let's even say the world that we live in. Olam Hasiyah, this world that we live in. This huge world. Huge world that relies on Hashem for rain, for sun, to vegetation, for everything. For us humans to exist. This huge world. What is the source for all its life force? Literally one nuance of halacha. Like, for example, we said in tefillin. You put on tefillin, and that's why it's important to make sure to put on tefillin every day, inspire other people to put on tefillin, or, for example, whether it's women to lighting Shabbos candles and keeping kosher, because when you do the right things, you draw down the right light, the right energy. God forbid if you don't draw it down, or you stop the flow. Now, so what's more powerful? Obviously, the Torah. Now let's take it a step further. Where does the Torah come from? It comes from, I'll say it in Hebrew, I'll translate it, machshava el yoina, the high level of thought, v'chachmasai, and the intellect of Yisbarach of Hashem, which basically is amku machshavesecha. That's the depth of Hashem's machshava. That's the depth of Hashem's thought. In other words, like this, to give a recap. The world and the worlds that we live in and all the worlds around are dependent on what? Halacha of the Torah. The halacha of the Torah is dependent on what? On the machshava and the chachma of Hashem. Like, I can use an example. Alter Rebbe says, take for example, we have here. Here, it's here. As a matter of fact, you can cut it, it doesn't even hurt you. You pull it, it hurts. But you cut it, there's not really much life force. But where does the hair come from? Everything comes from your intellect. Your intellect, it thinks all the tremendous deep stuff. The hair that you have in your head, on your body, comes from the intellect. That's on a physical level. But on a spiritual level, the Zohar says that halacha of the Torah is like here that's coming from the intellect of Hashem. Think about that. It's halacha. You're reading halacha, right? Do this, do that. You seemingly, why is it so important? But the answer is, because where is the halacha coming from? It's coming from Hashem, from the depth of Hashem. Now let's bring it back to our case. So what happens? King David is living his life, and we all know King David had he had challenges in his life. He had some serious struggles. You read the prophets about King David, he was King David, right? But he had a lot of challenges, King David. So King David had to find some real power to overcome his challenges. There were no therapists then, but he needed real therapy. He needed real power. He needed a real mentor. So what did King David do? He says to himself, oh my gosh. Think about this. The whole world, and everything in it, and all its stuff, is dependent on what? On one small halacha. The halacha comes from where? From the depth of the intellect and the thought of Hashem. So my little problems is nothing. It's a speck compared to Torah. He had an eye-opener. He had a paradigm shift. Think about this. Think for a moment. What King David saw. He says, oh my gosh, the whole world, again, we get excited about a table, about a chair. Not a table chair, not a house, not a community, not a city. World, think for a minute. The whole world is nothing compared to what? One halacha will make the world in a good mood, in good energy, or God forbid the opposite. So what's real power? World or halacha of Torah? Real power is Torah. So King David says, what? My challenges? Nothing. What's real? What should I be excited about? Torah. So therefore he went, David Zmiros cary lahu. He was rejoicing in Torah. Because guess what? Because Torah is real. Torah has the power. The world compared to Torah is nothing. That was the reason why he was happy. So if you think about it, was he happy for a good reason or a bad reason? He was happy for a good reason. Think for a second. He was happy for a great reason. Because he made a calculation, which was a correct calculation. The whole world compared to halacha, nothing. And obviously the halacha comes from the depth of Hashem. So therefore, what should I be happy with? The world? I should be worried about my tzarot, my materialistic physical needs that are met, they're not met, and it's working out, not working out, it's silly. I have the Torah. So he was zmiרות cary lahu. He was dancing and singing what? With the Torah. Mm-hmm. So seemingly, what did he do wrong? Here comes a powerful idea of Kabbalah, and Paul explains as follows. What did he do wrong? Very simple. Because this idea that we say that the world is dependent on halacha, and the halacha comes from the oimek of machshava of Hashem, which part of the depth of the intellect of Hashem does this level of Torah come from? So according to Kabbalah, it comes from chitzonius, from the external part, or achirayim, the heart, the back part. In other words, this aspect that we say that the whole world is running based on the Torah, and Torah comes from the thought and the intellect of Hashem. Which part of Hashem? Like the front shining part of Hashem, or the hind part, which basically is the dark part of Hashem? And the answer is, as we know, the Zohar says that it says noivlois chachma shalamayla Torah. it's like the things that's falling aside, like the small leftovers of chachma, the extra pieces. Like let's say you're making a garment, right? You're making a garment. You buy a piece of material, so you cut the shape of the material to make the garment. What do you do with all the leftovers? You put it in a box. Someone takes it home, makes scraps. Someone makes a little mat out of it. Whatever they want to make with it. It's a shmatis. So the Kabbalah says that there's a certain aspect of Torah which is higher in the world, and the whole world depends on that. You know what that comes from? That comes from the box of shmatis, lahavdil. In other words, from the external part of Hashem, not from the internal part of Hashem. So that's why King David was punished. Why? Because which aspect of Torah is he excited about? The external aspect or the internal aspect? The external aspect. Why is it called the external aspect? And an author explains like this. Because you think about the internal aspect of Torah, that means the pneumius of Torah, which comes from the pneumius of Hashem. So that comes from where? That comes from the Ein Sof light. And it was like this. You have pneumius of Torah, the essence of the Torah, which comes from the essence, the pneumius of Hashem's depth, from the pneumius of Machshava, and that's connected to the infinite light. Now let's think for a second about the infinite light. In infinite light, and we're finite, it's hard for us to comprehend infinite, but think about infinite light, something that's infinite. In the infinite light, if it's infinite, does this world exist?
No.
No. Finite to infinite doesn't exist. Not only that, think about it. Before Hashem created the world, this world exists?
No.
No. After Hashem created the world, did Hashem change?
No.
No, Hashem wasn't affected. So Hashem is infinite. This world really, compared to the infinite, it's like nothing. It's not like it's like nothing, it's nothing. And Hashem, before he created the world, after, he's the same thing. So therefore, does this world, in Hebrew it's called Toifus Makim, does it exist? Does it like create any, like take up any space in Hashem's world? Nothing. So the truth is, this world doesn't even exist. Mm-hmm. Not that it exists and it's an illusion. It doesn't exist. You can handle it? You guys are going to walk into a wall soon in a minute? This world doesn't exist.
What's the difference?
Exactly. This world doesn't exist. So if the world doesn't exist, again, you got to follow the flow here. Let's repeat it again. The pneumius HaTorah, which is connected to the pneumius of the Omek HaMachshava of Hashem, which is connected to the Or Ein Sof. So, if it's connected to the Or Ein Sof, and the Or Ein Sof means it's infinite. Therefore, if it's infinite, is there room for a world? No. And so if there's no room for a world, so you're going to say, I'm going to praise Hashem, because Hashem, the Torah of Hashem, the whole world is dependent on Hashem. Like as if the world is something, and it's dependent on Hashem. There's no world. There is no world. You guys got it? There's no world. There's no world. You like it. You like it.
Class is basically over.
That's when, no, now's when it begins.
Now it begins.
Now it begins. There it begins.
There's no world, now let's talk.
Therefore, there's no room to praise Hashem compared to the world. So that's why King David was punished. He's calling the Torah zmiros. You know why? Because the whole world is nullified to Halacha of Torah. That means the world is something. That's from the external part. That means you're hanging out in the external part of the Torah. In the internal part of the Torah, there's nothing. There's no world. There's no world. It's Hashem. It's infinite light. It's pneumius Torah. Up to the point that the Zohar says that pneumius Torah, it's not for us to be happy. Because what do we know about the level of pneumius? How can we relate to pneumius Torah? The only one that could be happy with the pneumius Torah, with the pneumius of Omek Machshava, is only Hashem. Why? Because Hashem is the only one that understands it. Hashem is the only one that knows the place of it and the value of it. Where do we come to? We're celebrating. It's Hashem's celebration, not our celebration. Because the infinite light, is it revealed to us? No, the Torah says clearly. Moshe says to Hashem, let me see your face. What does it mean? I want to see the essence of you. I want to see the infinite light. What does this? Hashem says clearly, upanai, my face, you're not going to see. And we know the Arizal, the author of Kabbalah, of Zohar, says that, what does it mean you're not going to see my face? The pnimius ha-Torah, the essence of Torah, you're not going to see.
How about before the Eitz Das?
What's that? You're not going to see it before the Eitz Das. It's infinite. How can you see it? Now, and as the verse says, the verse actually says in Proverbs, it says, "V'eya etzloi shashuyim." What does etzloi mean? To Hashem, it's enjoyment. For us, we can enjoy, we can celebrate with the Torah. We talk about the internal part of the Torah. External, yes. And that's what King David did, and he was punished for that. Because what do you mean? King David, you're King David, you should be partying with the external part of the Torah? It's a level. Obviously, it's a level. But King David, someone like King David, shouldn't get distracted with an external part of the Torah. Now, what's interesting is, so we see clearly there's two parts to the Torah. There's two parts to the infinite light. Well, there's two parts to the Oimek HaMachshava, and two parts. There's the Pnimius and Chitzonius. So the Alter explains it very in Tanya, and he says like this: that this level of Pnimius, which is Oyer Inside, which is infinite, that is the source of Neshamot. So our souls, not our bodies, our souls, our Neshamot, the source is in Pnimiut. Think about that. Our souls, our source, we're down here, it's down here. It's, the lights are off. But if you're able to connect to your neshama is connected to Pnimius. And as the Medrash says, that V'haya Etzla, we quoted the verse before, Uman, right? Amon, which the Medrash explains it as Oyman, which means like Hashem feeds us, feeds our neshama with the Pnimiut. Our neshamot are connected to the Pnimius. That's why we're able to do Mesiras Nefesh. We can go self-sacrifice. That's why we can do things which are beyond human comprehension, if we connect to our neshama. If we just think guf, body, then we're finite, we're limited. But if we're able to connect to our neshama, we're able to do wild things on a spiritual level. So our neshamos get our life force from where? From Pnimius. The world gets its life force from where? From Chitzonius. So we are on a much higher level in the world. Not, God forbid, to brag, but just on the contrary, to show the power we have, and therefore we can do tremendous things. The world is connected to Chitzonius, and we're connected to Pnimius. And as we know, it says the Torah is Panim V'achar, V'hiksuva, it's written Panim V'achar. It means there's the Panim of the Torah, and that is the source for the Neshamot. And there's the Achar of the Torah, the Chitzonius, which is the source of the world. Now, so the question is, we all know that in the spiritual world, everything has to match up. Everything matches up. If it doesn't match up, you need to get a better teacher. But if he doesn't, teach tells you, I don't know, that's a good answer. But if he tells you everything has to match up. So the question is, what do we say that King David, why was he punished? Why was he punished? He was punished because he said Zmirot about the Torah, which means he was only referring to Torah from Chitzonius, the way it's connected to the world. So the question is, what was his punishment? His punishment was shikha. He forgot. He forgot what? He forgot that he's supposed to put the ark on your shoulder, and instead he put it on that. So let's look at the first part. He's punished with shikha. What's the connection with shikha? What's the connection? Why did he forget? There's other punishments you can get throughout the Torah. This one got leprosy. I mean, why specifically shikha? Forgetting. I think in English it's called Alzheimer's. Why did he get Alzheimer's? Why did he forget? Why did he forget that halacha? And the Alter explains very, very simple. Because where was King David connecting to? The chitzonius or the pnimius of the Torah? Chitzoniyut. In chitzonius, the Alter Rebbe says, there's shikha. In pnimius, there's no shikha. Think about it. Something that's real and you're really connected to in a pnimiustic way, it's real, it's emes, you're connected to, it's you forget it? Like, do you ever walk out of your house and you forgot your hand in your house? Or your foot in your house? It ever happened to you? I don't think it ever happened. Why? Because your hand and your head and your feet is you. Now like this. If Judaism, for example, your tzitzit and your yarmulke or your hair covering is you, are you going to ever forget it? Yes or no?
No.
If it's you, you're not going to, just like you didn't forget your hand, you're not going to forget that either. But if it's not you, it's something we do. So one day you'll remember, one day you won't remember. It's very simple. Pneumius is deep, but it's real. Wow. Pneumius, you don't forget. Chitzonius, you forget, because it's not you. King David, where did he connect to? Which part of the Torah? Pneumius or Chitzonius? He connected to Chitzonius. So in Chitzonius, you forget things. So he forgot. You're supposed to put it on your shoulder. He put it on the wagon. Because what part of King David? Which part of Torah was he connected to? Chitzonius. That's why he forgot. If you're connected to Chitzonius, you're going to forget things. If it's Pneumius, if it's emes, if it's real, there's no forgetting. There's no forgetting in Pneumius. Powerful. And that's why it's important, a side note, to learn Torah, but not only to learn, to live it. And to connect to the emes of it.
So it becomes part of you. It's part of
you. If you come late to a minyan, are you connected to the minyan with Chitzonius or with Pneumius? It's very simple. When you forgot. If it's 5:15 is mincha, for example, and you show up 5:30. Obviously, the minyan is not this Chitzonius. Because if it was Pneumius, guess what? You'd be there already 5 o'clock. I got to be there on time. I'm giving you an example. It could be take any mitzvah. Take anything. If it's real, if it's Pneumius, there's no forgetting. Unfortunately, if it's Chitzonius, you forget. So that's why he forgot. But on the other hand, if you connect to the Pneumius, there's no forgetting. It's one with you. Now, and this Alter Rebbe takes us to the whole, that's the beauty of Kabbalah. It literally it goes into the depth and it shows you how everything matches up. Now, what did he forget? What did he forget? He could have forgot a lot of things. He could have forgot his name. He could have forgot this mitzvah, that. He could have forgot so many things. So, which mitzvah did he forget? About the ark, he's supposed to carry it on your shoulders. Carry it on your shoulders, physically carry it. And not carry it on a wagon. And why did he forget that mitzvah? He could have forgotten other things too. And the Alter explains very, very simple. Think about your shoulder. What's your shoulder? From the front part of your body or the back part of your body?
Both. What?
Your shoulders, in the front or the back?
Front.
Yeah.
Middle.
Was there.
The shoulders in the back.
There's the back.
You carry on your shoulder in the back.
Oh,
you carry on your shoulder in the back.
On the back. Yes.
Your shoulder, you're carrying on your shoulder. When you carry something on your shoulder, you see it? Let's say I give you something on your shoulder that carries. What are you carrying? You can't see. I'm carrying my shoulder. If you carry it in front of you, you can see it. You're carrying it like this. You're carrying your shoulder in back of you. So in other words, you're carrying it, what? On the back. So the shoulder represents what? The back. What is the back? Pneumius or Chitzonius?
Chitzonius.
Chitzonius. Very good. You guys are great, man. I love it. The shoulder represents Chitzonius. And what does the Torah say? Avodas HaKodesh Aleihem. What does he call the Aron? What does he call the ark? Avodas HaKodesh. It's holy. Why is it called holy? What was the ark? It says the ark had the tablets. The tablets, they were miraculous. Why? Because the letters were on which side?
Both sides.
Both sides. What were both sides? It was a miracle. Yeah, it was a miracle. You looked on this way, you saw it. You looked on this way, you saw it. Amazing. So the next question is, where's the back? There is no back. This is the front, and this is the front. Exactly. If you can see it from both, usually if you see it this side, that's the back. Or if you can see it this side, this is the back. So you can see it here, you can see it here. That means what? There's only a front and only a front. Torah is only, the tablets is Pneumius. So in other words, Avodas HaKodesh, this holy ark, which is basically Kol Kulei, all of it was Pneumius. You're supposed to put it on the shoulder. That means you're supposed to connect, our avodah is to connect the Chitzonius to the Pneumius. We get sidetracked. And unfortunately, we get involved with the Chitzonius, with external stuff. What's our avodah? Take all the Chitzonius and connect it to the Pneumius. And now sometimes you get excited about Judaism for Chitzonius reasons. Oh, you know why? Ooh, you know why I love Judaism? Because the Torah runs the whole world. The minute you're saying world, that's Chitzonius, okay. But the job now is to take that Chitzonius and elevate it to Pneumius and realize there's no world to begin with. So the job of the Avodas HaKodesh was to connect the Chitzonius to the ark, which is really Chachma Ilah. And that's why he specifically forgot that specific mitzvah. So it was like this. So you see from this chapter, the Alter Rebbe introduces something totally new, which is really, really amazing, that last week we learned the way when you learn, it draws down light into the world, it elevates the world. Here the Alter Rebbe is showing you something totally different. That Torah is really way beyond world. The pnimis of the Torah is way beyond world. A whole new concept. So when you're really learning Torah, you can learn Torah, I'm drawing down light to the world. That means you're really into the world. You're into the chitzonius. Or I'm elevating the sparks. And again, there's room for that. But the goal is, what he's saying is to go to the next level. And the next level is that what? The Torah is way above it. When you're learning Torah, you're connecting with the infinite part of Hashem. And you're connecting your pnimius, your internal to Hashem's internal. And that's a whole different league. That's a whole different level. And I think the lesson is such a powerful lesson because we can connect on a physical level, and it's okay. But the goal from this class, as you see, is to connect with pnimius, to connect on an infinite level. And when you connect to Hashem on an infinite level, whatever you do in Yiddishkeit, you do on an infinite level, whether it's prayer, whether it's Torah study, whether it's mitzvot, you're so connected, it becomes one with you, there's no shikha there, there's no forgetfulness. Not only don't you forget spiritually, you won't forget physically as well also. So, I think this lesson is a very, very important chapter, because it takes us to a whole different level. It literally is an expression of Chassidus. You have to be like a handbreadth above the world. It picks you up a little bit out of the world. Not to get sidetracked. The world is important, and we have to elevate the world. You have to bring light into the world 100%. But we have to remember there's also a component where the whole world, compared to Hashem, is nothing. And really, we want to connect to the pnimius of Hashem. So let's hope and pray that we all connect to the pnimius of Hashem. We connect to the pnimius of Hashem, we'll have real simcha, and we'll have real clarity, and we'll, God willing, merit to see the infinite light in a real way. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.